48 girls entered the labyrinth, and I was the only one who didn't scream. But I wasn't brave. I just had a glowing blue map etched into my retinas. Want to know why the system chose me? Because if I followed its directions, we would survive. But if I ignored it, the beast would tear us to shreds before midnight. Stick with me, and you'll discover why the most dangerous monsters aren't lurking in the dark. The air smelled of rust and damp earth. I stood in the center of a massive stone chamber. Around me, dozens of strangers huddled on the cold floor. They wept, they prayed, they begged for families who could no longer hear them. I watched the floating interface hover inches from my face. Did I want to play savior? No. The digital compass pointed north, and a timer ticked down from 5 minutes. The system gave no manual and no apologies. It just gave a countdown. I checked my pulse. Calm. The system fed me a continuous stream of adrenaline, keeping the panic suppressed. I walked toward the heavy iron doors at the far end of the room. The crying paused as they noticed my movement. A girl with braided blonde hair grabbed my sleeve. Her hands shook violently. She looked at me with wide, desperate eyes. She expected a hero. I had neither comfort nor salvation to offer. I only had the glowing path in my vision. The timer hit 3 minutes. A low rumble vibrated through my boots. The ancient walls groaned. Dust rained from the cracked ceiling. "Where are you going?" she asked. "Out," I said. "You can't just leave us." "Watch me." The floor shifted. I braced my feet. The stone tiles began to grind, moving like gears. The labyrinth was rearranging its architecture. The blue map recalculated, shifting from north to east, pivoted. The girls scrambled away from the sinking floor plates. One of them slipped. She dangled over a newly formed chasm. Her fingers dug into the stone. I stepped forward, grabbed her wrist, and hauled her up. She collapsed onto the ledge, panting. I didn't wait for gratitude. I kept moving. Why was the system displaying a red marker where she almost fell? I didn't understand it yet, but that crimson dot wasn't an environmental hazard. It was a feeding zone. The eastern corridor stretched into darkness. Torches flickered to life, casting distorted shadows against the mossy bricks. The group followed me. They had no other choice. I was the only one walking with purpose. A sharp sting throbbed in my right hand. Pain flared, hot and intense, traveling up my forearm. The system's text glowed. Weapon acquired. Bone blade. I gritted my teeth. I could feel the hilt materializing in my palm, heavy and warm. I didn't need to read the item statistics. The jagged, asymmetrical edge spoke for itself. It was a tool meant for slaughter, not defense. We walked for an hour. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. The only sound was the scuffing of shoes on stone. Wait, 49? I stopped. I counted the heads behind me. 48 girls.
Plume.
That made 49, but the life-form tracker showed 50 dots. For a moment, I thought we were safe in this narrow corridor. Then a drop of fluid hit my shoulder. I looked up. Clinging to the ceiling was a creature made of slick, gray skin. Was this a rescue mission? Or a slaughterhouse delivery? It had no eyes, just a gaping maw filled with razor-sharp teeth. It dropped. I swung the bone blade upward. The weapon connected with a sickening crunch. The monster shrieked, sounding like scraping metal. Black blood sprayed across my face, burning my skin. The system chimed. A jolt of electric energy coursed through my veins, erasing my fatigue instantly. Experience gained. I wiped the corrosive blood away. The girls screamed, their voices echoing down the dark tunnel. "Shut up," I barked. Noise attracts them. They fell silent immediately. Fear clamped their mouths shut. I looked at the dead creature at my feet. It was merely a scout. Where there was one, there were always more. The map in my vision expanded rapidly. Dozens of red dots swarmed toward our location. We were surrounded. The system fed me strength, but it felt volatile, like drinking from a fire hose. Every time I killed, a tiny percentage of energy didn't go to my combat stats. It went to a hidden reservoir labeled harvest efficiency. I pushed the thought away. I had to survive first. A narrow passage sat 50 yards ahead. If we reached that bottleneck, I could hold the swarm off. I broke into a sprint. The girls followed, driven by raw terror. The echoing skitter of claws on stone grew louder, multiplying by the second. Run. We reached the passage. It was barely wide enough for two people to stand shoulder to shoulder. I pushed the group inside, forcing them to the back. I turned to face the corridor we had just fled. The darkness seethed with chaotic movement. The system interface flashed crimson. Warning. Swarm approaching. I ignored it. I tightened my grip on the crude blade. The first wave hit my position. I hacked, slashed, and kicked without hesitation. The passage funneled the creatures straight into my weapon. The system fed me stamina, turning my muscles into tireless pistons. I was a butcher, and they were meat throwing themselves into the grinder. The pile of mangled bodies grew quickly, creating a wet barricade. The swarm finally hesitated. I stood my ground, breathing heavily. The blade dripped. The system interface pinged quietly. Swarm defeated. Path cleared. I turned back to the girls. They stared at me with a complex mixture of awe and sheer horror. I didn't care what they thought. I only cared about the map. I didn't know it yet, but every choice I made was leading to that one word. Wait, let me rewind. Because I lied about something. The map wasn't showing me the exit. It was showing me their exact lifespans. I stared at the numbers hovering above their heads. I thought they were player levels. I was wrong. The numbers ticked downward in erratic, unpredictable bursts. The girl with the braided hair, the one I had pulled from the ledge, displayed 12 hours. The silent girl shivering against the damp cavern wall? 2 minutes and 40 seconds. I rubbed my eyes. The system fed a cold, metallic ache into the base of my skull, a silent punishment for questioning its interface. The numbers remained. Why was the silent girl's timer so short when the room felt secure? I found out quickly. The stone beneath her feet wasn't solid. It was porous, leaking a colorless gas that smelled faintly of bitter almonds. I grabbed her collar and dragged her toward the center of the chamber. She coughed, sputtering as fresh air hit her lungs. Her timer stabilized, jumping to 3 hours. But the invisible gas was rising, slowly filling the lower depressions of the room. Where was the toxin coming from? And why did the labyrinth guide us into a venomous trap? I didn't wait to solve the puzzle. I ordered everyone up. We marched deeper into the stone bowels. The tunnel sloped upward, the air growing stale and dry. The walls were lined with strange, luminescent moss that pulsed in time with my own heartbeat. The 48 girls followed in a ragged, exhausted line. Their stamina was failing. I could see their digital timers fluctuating with every labored step. Some tripped over loose stones. Others leaned against the damp walls for support. I pushed them harder, ignoring their quiet sobs. Pity was a luxury that cost precious seconds, and time was the only currency we had left to spend. The corridor finally opened into a vast, circular library. Rotting wooden shelves lined the curved walls, holding crumbling, dust-covered tomes. In the center, a large iron door stood firmly shut, engraved with a heavy golden lock. It felt like a momentary sanctuary. The girls collapsed onto the dusty floor, their breathing ragged. I checked the digital map. The swarm was gone, but my stamina gauge blinked red. A dull throb pulsed behind my eyes, matching the rhythm of the warning light. Are we safe here? The braided girl asked. For now, I said. What do we do next? We rest. I sat near the iron door, examining the golden lock. I didn't know it yet, but this very room was the catalyst. Every choice I made was leading to that one word. I traced the intricate carvings on the metal. It wasn't a standard keyhole. It was shaped like a jagged, asymmetrical shard. I looked down at the bone blade resting across my lap. The shape matched perfectly. I had found the key disguised as a weapon. But if this blade opened the door, what exactly was I meant to face inside? I sheathed the weapon. I realized the labyrinth wasn't testing our evasion skills. It was testing our capacity for violence. This wasn't about surviving the environment anymore. It was about becoming part of it. The interface flared again. Why was the system scanning their emotional states, not just the monsters' positions? Did it care about their mental well-being? No. It was measuring their despair like a butcher measures fat. I stood up and paced the perimeter of the library. The survivors huddled together, whispering in hushed, frightened tones. They looked to me as their fierce protector. They didn't know their protector was reading their expiration dates. Every tear they shed seemed to feed a hidden meter in the corner of my vision. The air grew impossibly cold. Our breath plumed in the dim light. The wooden shelves began to rattle. Books tumbled to the floor, their decayed pages turning to ash upon impact. The golden lock on the iron door clicked, turning by itself. The heavy metal creaked outward, revealing pitch blackness. I drew the bone blade. The system fed a jolt of raw, agonizing heat into my chest, forcing my heart to pump wildly. Boss room unlocked. Trial commencing. I tightened my grip on the hilt. I stepped forward. They screamed. I braced myself. A massive, armored hand reached out from the darkness and gripped the doorframe. The creature stepped into the library. It was a towering knight, clad in rusted, weeping iron. Its helmet was hollow, burning with a sickly green fire. It dragged a massive broadsword that gouged deep trenches into the stone tiles. I calculated the distance. 3 strides. I lunged, aiming the jagged edge of my weapon at the exposed joint in its knee armor. The bone blade struck true, shattering the rusted hinge. The knight staggered, dropping heavily to one knee. For a moment I thought I had won the skirmish. Then the green fire flared violently, and the knight swung its broadsword in a devastating horizontal arc. I flew backward, crashing into a towering bookshelf. Ancient timber splintered, raining heavy wooden shards down on my shoulders. A sharp crack echoed through my chest cavity. Pain flared, white-hot and blinding, stealing the breath from my burning lungs. The system's text glowed maliciously in my peripheral vision. Ribs 3 and 4, fractured. I didn't need the digital notification. I could feel the jagged edges of broken bone grinding together with every agonizing gasp. I spat dark blood onto the floor. The girls scattered like frightened mice, scrambling away from the hulking monstrosity. The knight rose slowly, its shattered knee repairing itself with molten green energy. My health bar dropped to 40%. I gripped the bone weapon, using the ruined shelf to pull myself upright. The system displayed a new, flashing prompt right over the knight's chest armor. It wasn't a weak point marker. It was a digital countdown. Why was the boss wearing a timer? And what exactly happens when that green fire reaches 0? The green fire inside the armor flared, casting long, monstrous shadows across the ruined library walls. I scrambled backward. My boots slipped on the dusty tiles. The knight advanced with terrifying speed. It swung the broadsword again, clipping my shoulder. I spun, crashing into a stone pillar. My vision blurred. I was failing. The temporary barricade I built from broken shelves splintered into firewood. Did I have a backup plan? No. Did I need one immediately? Yes. I rolled away just as the massive weapon pulverized the column. Stone shrapnel tore through my sleeve, drawing fresh blood. I needed an opening desperately. The digital countdown on the monster's chest ticked past 30 seconds. I realized the timer wasn't a detonation sequence. It was a containment protocol. The rusted iron was holding the entity back. But if this heavy shell was designed to trap the beast, what exactly was I trying to unleash? Get back, I shouted, struggling to stand. We want to help, the blonde girl cried. You can't fight this. We want just watch you die. They refused to listen. Several survivors threw heavy, rotting books at the armored giant. The decaying paper merely bounced off the steel plates, but the frantic distraction worked. The knight turned its hollow helmet toward them, raising its blade for a sweeping strike. I didn't hesitate. I sprinted toward its exposed back, clutching the jagged weapon with both hands. I drove the sharp tip directly into the glowing crevice between its shoulder blades. The system interface flickered violently, projecting a harsh notification directly onto my retinas. A freezing sensation washed over my brain, numbing the pain entirely. Harvest efficiency, 100%. Protocol activated. I didn't comprehend the harvest message then, but I embraced the sudden, terrifying surge of raw muscular power. The bone blade absorbed the emerald fire. The knight let out a deafening, metallic shriek. Its armor cracked, fissures spreading rapidly across the iron surface. The countdown hit 0. The metal shell shattered. Jagged fragments flew across the room, embedding themselves deeply into the thick stone walls. A dense, choking cloud of gray dust obscured my vision. I coughed violently, gripping my weapon tightly, ready for the unleashed entity to strike from the shadows. Silence fell over the library. The dust slowly settled. I stood amidst the wreckage, panting heavily. The dark entity had vanished, leaving only a small, pulsating crystal on the floor. I picked up the glowing stone. The heavy iron doors at the far end of the room groaned loudly before swinging wide open. Fresh, cool air rushed inside, carrying the distinct scent of pine trees and rain. We had breached the boss room. The girls cheered, tears of relief streaming down their dirt-streaked faces. The blonde girl hugged me, her violent trembling finally subsiding. I allowed myself a rare, grim smile. I held the crystal tight, feeling its warm energy heal my fractured ribs. We walked through the open doorway, leaving the ruined library behind. The power I was looking for wasn't in the sword, nor the crystal. It was in the system itself. I assumed the worst was over. I believed we had finally reached the surface. The hallway ahead was brightly lit, lined with pristine white tiles and glowing fluorescent tubes. It looked like a modern medical laboratory. This environment wasn't a medieval labyrinth. The rusted stone and decaying shelves were just a theatrical facade. I stared at the clean, sterile walls. Why build a dungeon to look ancient when the actual structure was clearly a high-tech facility? We moved cautiously down the bright corridor. The joyful cheering died quickly. The clinical environment unsettled everyone more than the dark caves had. The survivors clustered close together, their soft footsteps echoing sharply against the linoleum floor. I checked the digital map hovering in my vision. The layout had transformed. Instead of random, natural caverns, it displayed perfectly geometric grids, indicating multiple artificial floors extending downward. Then I noticed the crimson dots. They weren't swarming toward our location. They were stationary, arranged in neat, orderly rows inside the adjacent rooms. I peered through a reinforced glass window into one of the closed chambers. My breath hitched in my throat. This wasn't about surviving a monster nest anymore. It was about realizing the horrifying scale of the trap we were caught inside. Inside the room stood dozens of glass cylindrical tanks. Each vat contained a grotesque, half-formed iteration of the creature I had just killed. They were being manufactured on an industrial scale. The labyrinth wasn't a wild prison for beasts. It was an artificial testing ground, and we were the expendable quality control subjects. The system pinged cheerfully. A warm, pleasant hum vibrated in my teeth, contrasting with the horrific sight. Phase 1 complete. Evaluating subjects. The interface updated the lifespans hovering above the girls' heads. Instead of random hours or scattered minutes, every single timer synchronized perfectly. They all displayed the exact same duration. 24 hours remaining. Look, the blonde girl whispered, pointing ahead. What is it? I asked, tearing my eyes away from the vats. The exit. Stay behind me. At the end of the sterile hallway stood a pair of massive sliding glass doors. Beyond the transparent barrier, I could see a breathtaking view. Lush green mountains, a brilliant setting sun, and a sprawling, peaceful valley stretched out forever. The ultimate promised reward. We broke into a desperate run. The girls laughed openly, rushing toward the beautiful landscape. We crossed the threshold together. The outside air felt wonderfully fresh against my skin. I took a deep breath, letting the triumph wash over my exhausted muscles. We had survived the impossible maze. Then the sky flickered. The setting sun glitched, turning into a cluster of dead, square pixels. The entire mountain range vanished instantly, replaced by a massive, curved steel ceiling projecting a holographic image. We weren't we were standing in an enormous, enclosed arena, and the audience was just taking their seats. The stadium lights blazed, violently blinding us. The massive steel doors we had just exited slammed shut with a deafening clang, locking us inside the killing floor. The girls screamed, scattering wildly toward the humming, electrified perimeter fence. I stood rigidly frozen. My trusted bone blade suddenly crumbled into useless gray ash. The glowing healing crystal in my pocket vibrated and shattered into fine dust. We were left defenseless. A metallic voice boomed from the hidden speakers above, demanding a fresh blood sacrifice to officially commence the survival games. The polished arena floor parted, releasing a pack of mutated, mechanized hounds. Their metal jaws snapped as they charged directly at the terrified, weeping survivors. I didn't have a physical weapon anymore, but I still had the system. I forced the floating interface open, bypassing the standard combat logs. I violently ripped into the hidden harvest efficiency data stream, flooding my own nervous system with the raw, agonizing energy I had forcefully collected from the Iron Knight. I didn't attack the swarming hounds. I sprinted forward and slammed my bare, overloaded fists directly into the stadium's central power conduit buried deep beneath the artificial dirt. The resulting shockwave was deafening. The massive stadium plunged into sudden, suffocating darkness as the main electrical grid catastrophically failed. The false holographic sky instantly shattered into millions of dead pixels, raining down upon us like cold digital snow. The mechanized hounds sparked heavily, sputtered, and collapsed into lifeless heaps of smoking scrap metal. The unseen audience panicked, their angry, confused shouts echoing loudly in the pitch-black arena. The blonde girl blindly grabbed my arm, frantically pulling me up from the scorched, smoking crater. We had successfully broken the terrible game, but the victory felt hollow. I looked at the glowing, synchronized timers hovering stubbornly above their heads. The numbers hadn't stopped ticking. I thought I was breaking us out of a sick, twisted entertainment broadcast. But when the emergency red backup lights flickered on, illuminating the reinforced glass VIP booths above, I clearly saw the pale faces of the cheering audience. They weren't wealthy, sadistic strangers. They were exactly identical, older versions of the 48 girls standing right behind me. I wasn't saving these terrified survivors from bloodthirsty monsters. I was desperately protecting them from their own future selves. I finally understood why the system tracked their tears instead of my kills. Power isn't found in a jagged weapon or a shattered iron cage. It's built on the quiet, agonizing realization that someone has to play the villain to keep the audience entertained. The backup generator roared to life, projecting a single glowing message across the ruined stadium screens. Commence project, reclamation. And that crimson number wasn't counting down to 0 anymore. It was rapidly counting up. But what exactly wakes up when the digital counter hits 3,000?